What we've got here is failure to communicate.
All right. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Common Ground with Jimmy P. Common Sense Makes Sense. This is a secondary show to our normal show, Common Ground with Jimmy P., which basically brings two people together with difference of opinion, and we try to find a common ground and bring unity back to this country, back to this world, because right now, if everybody hasn't noticed, we're in pretty much of a big mess with the way everything's going, especially in our country, which is unrecognizable to guys my age right now. On the previous Common Grounds with Jimmy P., we had debates, but the key thing is at the end of the show, everybody stays friends. We're not necessarily trying to change people's opinions, we're trying to get each other to understand each other. Now, with Common Ground, Common Sense Makes Sense, as we're going to talk about subjects that not necessarily have a debate. On the previous shows, it was mostly older guys my age and older, 55. We had a couple of young guys in, but we're all almost dead. So right now, we're trying to bring in the younger crowd and see what their views on, because this is their world. Our world is gone already. So we have to make sure the children do well and their kids do well. So we're going to talk today. I have with me, my guest is Nicholas Nassif. He's my nephew. He's married to my goddaughter. And he's an urban developer out here in New Jersey. Very intelligent man. But he's younger. You know, he's a little bit younger. He's in his early 40s, right, Nick? Nick's in his early 40s. My niece is in her early 30s. But it's more important to know what they're thinking and what they see the future as. Nick has an 11-year-old daughter. So, you know, he wants to make sure everything goes well for her too as well. So this is my point is we need to get this country back. And if we get this country back, maybe we get the world back. So today we're going to talk about the first Common Ground with Jimmy P. Common Sense Makes Sense. Once again, my producer Brian Williams in the back. He don't want to be on the camera today. He's got a pimple on his forehead, so he's hiding, and he's bald, so it kind of looks like the Cyclops. Anyway, so Nick's going to talk. We're going to learn a little bit. He's going to educate us, actually. We're going to talk about economic populism, right?
Economic populism.
And let me introduce us, Nick Nassif. Nick, say hello to the Common Ground people out there.
Hello, Common Ground folks. Happy to be here, Uncle Jimmy.
Okay, so in short, well, not in short, in long, this may take one or two shows. What is economic populism?
Well, it's an old idea that's come back around.
What do you mean by an old idea that's come back around? Where did it go? And
Populism sprang out of the left
okay,
in the late 1880s, early 1890s.
in America.
In America, it was an American movement that connected rural agrarian politics
All right.
with the politics of the city.
Okay.
The idea is that a farmer in West Virginia has more in common with a low-income wage earner in the Bronx than he does the professional working-class guy with a $1 million house on Staten Island.
Okay.
It was a connection. It was connecting the economy to people's lives. And quite frankly, finding the commonalities in between them.
Well, that's common ground.
That's
basically.
common ground.
Okay,
That is the roots of
It's
economic
working already.
populism.
All right, go ahead. So you're trying to find common ground. Now, how does that affect the guy on Staten Island, though? What happens to him?
Okay.
But
We got to get there.
Yeah,
let's
okay, we gotta
let's
get
set
there.
let's set the table a little.
I got to play devil's advocate here.
That's fine. Let's set the
Everybody
table.
like my vest. I got a new vest. Go ahead.
I like the vest.
I know it's my new look.
It's a little bit like a magician.
I'd say because you listen.
But-
I
but-
make things disappear and appear. Trust me. But go ahead.
Joey. Yeah. So
Especially money.
we're all good at that.
Yeah.
It's a Mediterranean thing.
Yes, it is.
We got to take care of everybody.
Yeah.
Well, let's set the table a little bit. I want to take a step back and kind of talk about my experience, what brought my family to this country, and the connections in between, and why I sort of think that way moving forward in my life, and how interesting it is to me that a movement before there were cars on the street is more relevant today than most of the things that came out.
Okay, but explain to the people. You said the farmer is more common with the worker in the Bronx than the guy in Staten Island. But what is the movement itself? What is the concept of that? And how, like I said, how does that affect the gentleman in Staten Island? So how do we get everybody on the same page? And what is the goal of economic populism?
So economic populism is, okay, there's a lot of ways to define it.
Okay.
I think one of the things, So the right has taken up the language of populism.
Okay.
Trump ran on a very populist message, which ironically is a very left of center ideal that was developed in the late 20th century.
Trump wasn't really a conservative. He was a Democrat his whole life, but he
Right,
did that
but he ran on a populist message. So this
Yeah.
is what a populist message sounds like.
Yeah.
It sounds like, hey, guys, you have a corporate takeover of your nation. You have elected officials that serve shareholders and serve donors. You have public policy that's crafted off of what the donors are asking for, which is a very small segment of your population that quite literally controls the mass of economic probabilities and possibilities in your economy. So if you have politicians, so the first thing that populism said, to take it back to the beginning, is money doesn't belong in elections because you're just incentivizing, you're legalizing bribery.
Yeah.
You're literally legalizing bribery. What you're saying is you now have to respond to your donor class, not your constituent. That's now baked into the system. And after Citizens United, let's spring forward 100 years, you have that in the regulatory framework, but you also have it as situation normal. Normal is serve the donor, not the constituent.
It's pay for play.
That's exactly what it is.
That's all it is.
And you see that played out in the American system from the federal government all the way down to the local level. Like, in my business, I see it all day, every day. Did I donate to this guy's party is how I'm going to get my building permit.
Yeah.
It's
Mafia shakedowns.
across the board, from the federal government to
Right.
your local government. So,
And that all comes basically, I don't mean to interrupt you, all comes to, where the mafia based their economics on, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where'd the mafia get their economics from? Where'd they learn from? The Vatican.
the Vatican. Yeah.
Vatican. And a lot of people don't know this. That's another topic. We'll get into the
Right,
Vatican.
which,
another
by
show.
the way, dovetails with the agrarian economy and the Vatican ownership of land, and we can get into
A
that
lot
too.
of people don't realize. We'll do another show. And I'm famous for this. That's another show.
That's another
folks.
show,
That's
guys.
another show. But the Vatican, and you people, you'll understand something. We'll get into another show about me with religion, faith, and all of that nonsense. Had it, lost it, got it back, all this shit. But the Vatican, no one knows really how corrupt they are. And what goes on. I mean, a lot of people do know, but like you say,
They
now,
were
but
run
this
like
is
a
where the
corporation.
mafia.
They were one of the donor classes. They're not anymore.
Yeah, well, the mafia took their hierarchy and how they run business from the Vatican.
Correct.
And that's what now, like you're saying, is going on now, and populism is trying to avoid
Which
that.
is a
correct?
very corporate structure, by the way.
Yeah, and you just said something very interesting about money doesn't belong in elections. There's two things. We're going to agree and disagree on this one. And one thing you'll never hear me say is, we can agree to disagree. That just sounds so retarded. I fucking hate it.
No, it's
Excuse
silly,
the
because
language.
let's
let's not
find
agree to
the
disagree.
common ground.
We'll find the
Literally.
common ground. We'll agree and disagree. But
That's-
we're going
that's
to disagree.
checking
on
out.
something.
That's
Here's
checking
the
out
problem.
for you,
You
right.
do need money to campaign and get your voice out. So like you say, the farmer and the Bronx guy. Now for the farmer, now this is back in, you're talking the 1800s. How do you do that without money? But now in today's day and age, I feel you need some money. So some of our tax money should go to, let's say, $200,000. You got 200, Trump's got 200,000, and Biden's got 200,000. Or let's say 2 million and 2 million, more realistic numbers. But even those numbers are low. You each have an equal amount of money, and it doesn't come from donors. Now, is that somewhat of what populism
That's somewhat,
is?
but can we take
Okay,
one step
yeah,
back?
go ahead,
Let's
go ahead.
let's set the table just a little bit more.
All right, go ahead.
Here's the irony and the parallel. So what was happening in America in the 1890s? We were springing towards, we're just 20 years away from the we're in the middle of the Gilded Age.
Right.
Which sees its excesses in the 20s, and then you get the
The
Great
Roaring
Depression.
'20s, which was
So what's happening
what
in
I should've
America
been.
right then? Yeah, right? We should have been. We both.
Yeah.
The Tommy guns and the whole thing.
yeah, I would have been dead, but would have been a fun.
But it would have been a
3
fun
years.
20 years.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would
I'm
have
with
been 20,
you.
but I would have
Maybe.
10. Okay, I mean,
No, but here's the parallels, and here's what's interesting: is technology changes, clothing changes, but the narratives stay the same. People are the same. We have not evolved.
Right.
We're the same people we were 100 years ago, or 200 years ago, or 1,000 years ago. But it's interesting to me. Populism arose out of this mass accumulation of wealth into a tremendously small number of hands relative to the population as a whole.
So you're familiar with the Rothschilds and Rockefellers and all that?
Right. So populism was a
You know
response.
about those people?
Absolutely. We can talk.
Another show. Another show.
We can talk a lot about that.
Oh, we're gonna have to move out here, Brian.
So what we had.
We're on location, people.
We are on location.
We're on location.
We're reporting live from the dirty Jersey.
Yeah.
But we're in the Garden State part of Jersey.
Very nice.
We are surrounded by gardens and farms and organic food and lots of kumbaya.
No such thing as organic food. But go ahead.
Free range, at least.
Yeah, all right.
Like they run around before we eat them. It's horrible. But it's interesting, the parallels, right? So you have this growing. So let's say from pre-Civil War, you have the slave economy collapses. You have the rise of the robber baron, and you have this accumulation of wealth, primarily as it related to industry, particularly the railroad. As you cut the railroad, which requires the steel, requires
everything.
the coal, that.
Especially when it came to transporting the oil.
That's
you know
your
all about that. Right?
Right. So now that's been replaced with your this sort of like the defense contracting, pharmaceutical, big finance kind of like triumvirate that has sort of congealed around itself. And they both play in both parties. They both give to both parties. Pharma's a little bit more aligned with the left.
There's one party.
There's one party.
Give me money party. Make me and my family rich party.
Right.
And we'll make believe we're going to help you, and then we're going to stick it right up your wazoo as soon as we're back in office.
So populism arose. Populism is America's legitimate response. I say legitimate, meaning from a larger group of people saying, look, we're not okay with you taking all this money out of the economy, beating our wages down, giving us unfavorable working conditions. It was a response to all inequality. So on the left, here's the thing, we have to step back. So the left, freedom is often associated with the right in America.
Right.
But in fact, freedom, which is connected to liberty, which is connected to equality, is an idea of the left. That's the French Revolution. That's the American Revolution. Those are left ideas.
Okay,
Hold on. Oh, no, but they're quite literally that the individual is free, but his freedom cannot encroach on the equality of the collective.
So then how does that? Okay,
but that balance,
that's the
that play.
concept. So you're saying
we're talking
you're saying
concepts right
freedom is a left concept, but we do know that.
Generally, no, but that's the origination of it.
Yeah, it's the origination.
But that's where does left and right come from?
Right.
Where does those terms come from? That's the French Revolution. So you had the Parliament, or I don't know what they called it at the time. You had everyone on the right side was conservative, meaning that they pledged allegiance to the old feudal way.
Right.
Then you had the left who said, no, I believe in individual liberty, freedom, and equality. So the idea that the individual is free outside of the constraints of him having a place in society based on owning a piece of land, being a propertied white man in this case.
Right. A
The
serf
idea
at the
was-
time. They were called serfs at the time.
Precisely.
And it serfs,
You can
indentured
use
servants,
whatever you want to use
the
the
whole
term.
Magna Carta.
Got it.
That's a history lesson. But go ahead.
It is, but it's interesting
Yeah.
because that's where left and right comes from.
But
the way
then what
we
doesn't
define
make
it.
sense though
It's
is
people
you're saying freedom and equality in this thing, right?
Just hold on.
Okay.
Let me.
You know where I'm going with this.
I know where you're going with it,
Go
and this
ahead.
is where things get bastardized. This is where things devolve. This is where politics comes in. But this conceptually the idea, and this is my beef with the modern left, is they forgot about the freedom part.
Yeah.
They've only remembered the equality part. But the two are intimately linked, and you cannot have one without the other. Like, for example, let's say
Hit on slavery.
John Adams came back to life today.
Right.
Let's say we got past our own evolution politically and culturally, where now women have the right to vote, everyone has the right to vote. If you're of age, doesn't matter if you're black, white, female, male, whatever label, you can all vote. So we're literally all equal.
With or without an ID.
But the idea that freedom was disconnected from equality, the freedom of the individual and the equality of the collective, to separate those two ideas from our founders' perspective would be, they wouldn't understand. Like, you can't have one without the other. They go hand in hand. So why, it's interesting to me, it's more anecdotal comment that It's sort of interesting how the right in America appropriated the left ideas. If you go back to the beginning,
are right and the left. Because like
right, and this is where we get to populism.
Yeah,
Well, populism
yeah,
is
so
telling
we
us.
get back into populism because the whole
So-
freedom thing. All right, you're saying freedom's a left idea. The left was for slavery, and even though people don't believe that,
No, I'm
that's
saying
just
a left
fact.
in the actual terminology of how we talk about Western civilization, how we talk post-Enlightenment, from John Locke to Descartes. I mean, we listed all of the thinkers that formed.
Rene Descartes was tabula rasa.
Right.
Life is a blank state.
all of
that
the
is a blank
thinking,
state.
all of the thinking that created the point in time where you had a very radical departure from, a bunch of white guys that owned slaves decided, you know what? No. We're going to be free. We're not going to have a monarchy. We're not going to have a feudal system. So they actually went back in time, right? They started reading the Greeks, and they
Right.
connected the Greeks to the Enlightenment, and they put the two together, and we have what we have now. So to me, it's interesting.
But when you're saying these guys that owned slaves, they wanted freedom, but they wanted to keep their slaves.
They wanted to keep their slaves,
Or that-
but everything
once you said that's
exists.
Freedom and equality, then go out the door. Cause
Well, that's the hypocrisy of the time, right? That's
But-
where you have to separate
but also-
people from historical context.
But also,
And
people
you've
have
got-
to
I think people
understand
deserve a little
our
bit of-
country was not the only thing. Slavery still exists today, and for another show, so without slavery, none of this world would have been built. Not,
Well, that's the
I'm not
incredible
condoning
irony.
it whatsoever.
Absolutely
but
not.
the Italian people were slaves. You're Lebanese. Lebanese people were slaves to other Arab nations. Italian people were enslaved by their own people. Romans enslaved their own people.
Look.
Thousands of
Behind
years.
every great progress in human history
Is slavery.
is incredible amounts of human death and suffering that was thrown at it to make it happen.
Yeah, because you couldn't
Okay,
afford.
that's the way of the world.
You can't
Okay.
build Manhattan
No,
today.
and that's not a justification. That's an
No,
observation.
it's not. It's the Great Wall of China. You think they got a
let's-
living wage?
I'm going to get him back on track.
Okay, go ahead.
gonna bring you back to
Go
center.
ahead, go ahead. Give me populism.
So let me spit this out.
Go ahead.
So you had two very similar things transpiring in America, separated by roughly 100 years. You had the amalgamation of capital into a very small number of hands.
1 to 2%.
You had a rising awareness. You have a much more educated populace now that is harder to fool. Then you have the government deregulating finance. I mean, the parallels are insane. I mean, it's literally the same thing repeating. It's just instead of trains we're building rockets and complex financial instruments. And
Another thing we go
medicine.
into another time is the biggest fraud of all, the stock market.
It is. It's
I worked
it's
for
a
Wall
casino. I
It's
forget who
fake.
said it. It's the stock market is a graph of rich people's feelings.
Yeah,
At any given point in
the
time.
stock market.
That's
We're
what the
getting
stock
another.
market is.
The stock market, though it runs the entire world, it's all a smokescreen.
So
Okay.
populism but here's the thing. To be a populist is to say, look, we want to privilege, irrespective of your cultural positions, irrespective of your religious positions, what trumps all of that is our individual humanity and the fact that we pretty much all want the same thing. We want to raise our families. We want them to be healthy. We want the next generation to do better than the last one. We want to pass on some wealth, and we want to get along with our neighbors. What it also-
Unless you're evil or corrupt.
unless you're evil or corrupt. And the problem is we have a system
But
that,
you just said pass on wealth.
well, that's what we're going to get. That's where equality comes in.
Okay.
Just one second.
Okay,
Let's set the table completely.
This is my job. This is my job.
My first thing
I
is
have to do my job.
my first thing is to help us define populism because, look,
And when did it? You said it started 1890s.
1890s, and then
What-
it died. And
How
it became,
fast did it die?
Roosevelt, right around by the time Theodore Roosevelt came in,
1913,
which is 19
I think. Came in right before. No.
before World War One, though,
Roosevelt.
because you had when he went and fought down in Cuba.
Debate. What the fuck was that?
When he, whatever.
No, Roosevelt. Yeah, no, Roosevelt might have been 1910.
Yeah, when he
1908.
put together all the parks,
1908.
national parks. Yeah.
Yeah,
well-
I gotta come in. I gotta come in.
Well, that's sort of like
So what's the? So we still didn't get to the concept. So populism in a nutshell. You want people equal, but and now you said that we're going back
It's
to
the
what you said originally.
priority. Okay, so let's look. It's saying, look, are the problems in our nation because of our racial or gender differences, or are we living in a system that
Designed
is
for us to
providing a
fail.
massively unfair advantage to one group of people and is designing everyone else to fail? And to really, it's a form of economic slavery. When you're relegated to the realm of wage earning, and all you have is your labor to sell, and you have all the government regulations beating down those corporations paying you the best wage that you can because they're trying to maximize output to shareholder. You have a system that isn't going to perpetuate anything positive. There's nothing positive.
You're talking about capitalism.
No, I'm talking about late stage capitalism. I'm talking about unfettered capitalism. I'm talking about capitalism that has all the rules taken off the playing field.
You're talking about basically inherited wealth. Is basically talking because all these people that have the money.
Well, that's one
already-
particular
that's one.
issue.
But you can, and like this is why I disagree with the whole thing that the whole suppress nonsense. Because you might see,
This is where populism says, no, that's bullshit. Populism
I
says
believe like
it's the corporations that are
some
fucking
people
it.
have a disadvantage.
Pardon my English.
No, the corporation. I understand the fact that the corporations they support the politicians. The politicians have to do what they want, and they get to stay up in the top. And you know what? I'm not 100% against that. I'm 100% against the politicians involved. But if you have a company that you built up, like let's take J.D. Rockefeller for instance. This guy busted. He single pissed third grade, and he did what he did. He learned from the gentleman who took him in. He went. He built everything on his own. He deserves to be that wealthy. But then to take this is where individualism comes in. To take that and then not help other people out. You don't have to help people, but the people that work for you should treat them better.
Here's
They
the
should
problem:
get treated
is
good.
you're relying on the distribution of the resources of an economy to the political goodwill of an individual. What I suggest to you is that no, there needs to be taxed appropriately along the way, and look, you just shouldn't. When you see okay,
Jeff
Rockefeller.
Bezos.
Okay, let's look at Rockefeller versus Elon Musk, for example.
I like Elon.
Because I like Elon, so
I
I'm going
like
to pick
Elon,
on him
too.
right now.
Yeah,
I'm a big fan of Elon Musk for other reasons, because of
guy's fucking
what I've
brilliant.
done, what I've dealt with in my career, professional career in particular, and bureaucracy and red tape. Anybody who has the balls to say, look, I don't care what the government says. I'm going to go get this done. I'm going to launch a rocket, and then I'm going to guide that rocket pod right back down to where I launched it from.
Two. At the same
probably
time.
less than half
Two
the
at the
price.
same time.
Less than half the price that the government's going to
Yeah.
pay. But why? But here's where we get into populism. Why is it so expensive for the government to do that?
Because they're robbing you.
Right, but why?
Because they have to pay off everybody else that puts them in office. That's how it goes.
Right, they get
So
the
that's criminal.
contract because you have Raytheon.
So
saying,
what did
okay,
populism do to change this, and why did
well,
it
it was
work?
defeated. It
It was defeated. And I'll
Defeated.
tell you, and I don't know anything about populism, but now I'm learning. But you know why it was defeated? Because there's a bullshit two-party system in this country, which
Correct.
should not exist.
That-
I don't
that's
think
what
there
the
should be
populist movement was.
Any,
It was a
any
third
party
way.
whatsoever, because it's bullshit. You can't tell when you look at Congress and you look at the Senate that they're up there and they're fighting against. They ain't fighting. After they fight on TV with us, yeah, some of them have difference of opinion. They're in the back room going, okay, I'll do this, you do that.
And they're going to
they
each
get that
other's
generation-
weddings.
They get the generational
And they're
wealth.
going to the same clubs, and the kids
Yeah.
are going to the same schools.
Yeah,
They don't disagree about
that's
anything.
the elite. And listen, I have nothing against the elite, but don't make us pay for it. That's all I'm saying.
What gets me is when you have the divisive, when the parties bring in culture war issues, whatever the hot button issue is.
Right,
it's
everything's
divisive.
it's not even racist no more. It's races. They can't even say the goddamn fucking word. It's racist. No, it's not racist. Everything's not fucking racist, and they jump on it. And that's the left. But now. I'm not defending the right. I'm not really right or left, but I'm not defending the right. But everything is. If you disagree, it's racist, because then everybody gets all up in arms about it. It's racist. But then why don't we talk about? And one thing I'm going to do on this show. I'm never going to badmouth any politician, anybody. Everybody's got their own agenda, because I want them all to come on this show. I want them to come talk to me. But you have somebody like, I seen that. I would love Auntie Maxie. I would love to have you on my show. Maxine Waters. I would love to have her on my show, and not to badger her, not to attack her like the right-wing reporters do. I want to ask her, how do you seriously come on and say something that Trump or some right-wing guy did? Oh, that's violent. This is, and then you go and you say to people, oh, get up in their face if they're Republican. Well, tell them they're not welcome here. You're propagating exactly what you're preaching against. You know, and you've been in office so long, or like John Lewis, the Republican.
Let's
was a nice man.
Let's carry this thought through. Though.
He went. What did his district look like for 35 years? It was a hellhole. And when Trump called it a shithole, oh my God, he's racist. No, you had 35 years to clean it. Not talking bad about John Lewis. Seemed like a nice man. But what did you do? You were there 35 years. Why were you there 35 years? And is it racist to say that he may have kept getting reelected, possibly because he was black?
Got a question for Nick.
Okay.
From 100 years ago, the system that was in place, the rich richer and the powerful more powerful. What has really changed?
Nothing.
It's on steroids now.
Yeah.
Now you have, in the law, you have a codified, legalized form of bribery.
Yeah.
You have corporations are people that corporations can express themselves as individuals. I mean,
it's bullshit.
Citizens United. I mean, it's like
Explain
bizarre.
lobbying firms.
What's that?
Explain lobbying firms.
Lobbying firms. Let me take one step back though, if I could, and I'm going to but I'll end up there.
We're going to be here all day, folks. Probably, Brian. What do we got? Done 10 minutes on this show? We got 10 minutes more on the show. There's going to be. We may be sleeping over.
We may be sleeping.
We may be sleeping over.
We have a lot to talk about.
Rosie, order the pizza. Go ahead.
It's my wife.
My niece. Go ahead. All in the family. Yeah.
All in the family. But here's the interesting thing. Populism has come and gone 3 times in American history. In its inception.
Right.
And you know who was the second person that brought back the populist message?
With FDR, right?
Yes.
He brought it in with the welfare
yes,
system.
but I'm going to say,
all right, good.
but not just the welfare system. I mean, you know, the man. Okay, we can talk about that. New Deal.
He was born on my birthday, by the way, January 3rd.
But I would argue the most populist voice that arose after the agrarian movement was Martin Luther King. And what the reason
we're big on Martin Luther King. We're big. A lot of people, you're like, no. Martin Luther King was
but
great.
I'm big on Martin Luther King for the reason that...
And that's why they killed him.
But do you want...
He had the right idea.
But here's the thing.
Even Malcolm X.
MLK... hold on one second.
Malcolm X was a pretty cool dude, too.
He was a cool dude. MLK was the darling of the left when he was talking about race. But when he connected, and I don't think it's ironic that literally when he said this publicly, he was dead 3 or 4 days later. He made the same kind of comment. He said something to the effect of, I'll bastardize and murder this, but he pulled from the propaganda of the Populist Party of the late 1890s.
People shouldn't be judged by the color of their skin.
No, this is what he said. No, wait, hold on. It gets better.
That one?
No.
You know what I'm talking about, though, right?
I do, but what he said is...
Brian, pull that up.
He said the most dangerous man in America is the white liberal.
Malcolm X said that.
MLK said that. He said it 3 or 4 days before he died.
Wait, didn't Malcolm X say the same thing?
He said the same thing, but he connected it in a similar way, but with the language of populism.
Lyndon B. Johnson.
So
said. We all know what Lyndon B. Johnson said. We'll get to that later. You heard what he said, though, right?
So I love MLK because he said, "Look, I see it as a layer of onions. But what's the macro issue? Is it your race or is it your class? Is it your position in society and your ability to control some level of capital, or is it your race?" And what he said is, look, a poor farmer in West Virginia has a hell of a lot in common with a teacher, a black teacher in Detroit. I'm making that up and paraphrasing. But their lives have more in common because of the fact that they're purely wage earners whose wages are beaten down through regulation, through legalized bribery,
and they can
and exploitation.
And they know what it's like to go without sometimes.
So as soon as he brought the issue to economics and not skin color, he had to go. He had to go.
That's a
Because
shame.
white liberals have this tendency, they use culture issues, like now it's gender or whatever the issue is. Of the
Oh, we
minute.
got to do show. We did a couple of shows on gender.
But
already.
they hide behind these culture issues, but they don't deliver the goods in Congress because they're paid by the same group of people as the
Big
other side.
Pharma is the biggest criminals
Here's
of
my
all
point.
time.
That's my point. My point is that there is.
I can't bring up the word, but the thing that we all have to get now in order to get a sandwich, we're not doing. All right, I'm getting producers cut me off on that. We're not allowed to say sandwich. Okay. Anyway, but like I said, Big Pharma, they control. They're some of the biggest lobbying positions in the world.
They are, and it terrifies me. You know, before it was smoky backroom deals, and now it's legalized. Now they just put it in your face.
What about
They
the
don't even
insider
try.
trading?
Look at the Democratic Party.
Insider
Look at these
trading was
hustlers.
allowed until what, 3 years ago? Insider trading in
Well,
the Senate.
it
was
just happened at the Fed in multiple places across the country.
What about?
You had like 4 or 5 Fed presidents, 3 that were just booted because they changed their portfolios the day before they increased the money supply.
Yeah, and what about
In early days
after
of
the
Corona.
election in December? And
Yeah.
I'm not saying nothing bad about my girlfriend Nancy Pelosi.
No, she's a
But-
criminal. I'm
But
sorry, she's a criminal.
Okay, you can. I'm neutral. I'm common ground. But
I'm
her
a lefty.
husband made. I think it was. I don't know the number. In the millions of dollars right after the presidency, because a bill that she enacted, he
Correct.
happened to buy stock that her enacting the bill would have benefited.
That's correct.
The stock, and he made. I don't know. I think it was like 17 million. Don't quote me
was
on the
10.
number. 10 million. Okay, 10's good. I take 10. You take
I'll
10.
take a
Brian.
$10 million payday for
I take 10. You know what?
moving one piece of
And
a line item on a paper.
I'll even pay your tax rate. What do you want to charge me 60? I'll pay 60%.
Well, you're
I'm
not.
good. I got 4 million.
You're not
left.
paying any taxes, probably,
Yeah.
but
And then when she was asked about it, she goes, I don't know what my husband does. What do you mean?
well, I'll give you another good example. That's
How
what
do
I
you
mean.
not know what your husband does?
Look,
You're
I don't-
80. You're married 70 years. You don't know what your husband does.
Here's the deal. The deal is they're all the same. They're all the same. They just use culture war issues or whatever is happening in the cultural zeitgeist of the country at the time as smoke and mirrors while they cut deals behind the scenes, and they all enjoy the same tax breaks. They all have the same donors, and they all hang out together. It's control. It's exploitation. It's division. It's the oldest game in the book. Plato talked about it, for God's sake.
Okay, so now that's 2 times. Third time pop. So it died after Martin Luther King got whacked out? Well, Malcolm
Yeah.
X tried putting it in, but that was what? What did he get killed a year later?
No, Malcolm X got killed in 4 years before that. So MLK was 69, and Malcolm X was, I think, 64 or 65.
Malcolm X was that early?
Yeah,
Wow.
in
Okay.
Harlem when he got jacked.
All right, and then you said there was a third. There was
Well, there's a third time, and this is where the irony comes in. And this is
All right,
where
we're going to cut
this
it
is
after the third
punchline.
time, and then we're going to go into the Populist Party today and what's going on with it and the movement.
Well, here's
so what's
the interesting
third
thing.
time?
The third time was the irony of all ironies. It was this guy that I'm not a fan of for a lot of reasons, and most of them not for the reasons that you see on mass media. Donald Trump found the language of populism,
Right.
and he ran on the language of populism. He
Well,
didn't do anything he said he was going to do.
And I'm just going to
Well, he
just
ran
for a
on
quick
that,
moment.
but
My second mother, Mrs. Pizzicato, Peter's mother, she told me she worked for a huge law firm. She was one of my mother's best friends growing up. They were lunch mothers together when I was a kid. And Peter and I, we're like brothers. We're so close. She still treats me like her son. She told me a story when we were talking about Trump, and like you said, he went with the popular. You don't like him, but he had views like you did. She said she had this new lawyer come into her firm. She was explaining the whole thing about Trump. Because I thought, I wasn't really a fan of Trump's as far as personal, but when I saw what his views were, it's like a populist view. Even though I didn't know I was a populist at the time, I guess I'm a populist now. But I lean conservative, but I like Trump's views. She said this new lawyer came in, and he had a real cocky attitude. He was bad, and he was working with it. She's been there some time, and one of the partners in the firm is a huge firm. She works for one of the biggest firms in Manhattan. She said she didn't like the guy. His attitude, he's real cocky. Just didn't like this guy. And the boss asked. He said, Nancy, how's it working out with him? She goes, I got to be honest with you. I don't like this guy. She goes, I don't like this guy. He goes, how's he doing? She goes, what do you mean, how's he doing? And she said, how is he doing at what he goes, he's phenomenal. He's getting the job done. She goes, but he gets on my nerves, he's irritating it. He says, you don't have to like him. You just have to make sure he does what he's supposed to do and gets the job done.
Well,
and
right.
that's what people need to understand.
Well, that's
you
the
don't
problem.
Gotta like,
That's my
you
beef
don't
with
gotta
Trump.
like your president.
The guy, but he ran on a populist message, and then he passed the most insane tax law and transfer of wealth that we've ever seen until the pandemic, which was the second largest transfer of
So
wealth
what law
from the
was that,
bottom of
guy?
the. When the you should have brought my notes. The tax bill that it's basically the Bush tax cuts that Obama extended,
Right.
and then he memorialized indefinitely. So you had carried interest, you had no change to capital gains, the carried interest loop tax law, which is
Right.
what your hedge fund guys use to earn income but only pay 20% pay
Right.
capital gains rate. That was literally like the most unpopulist thing you could possibly do.
Yeah, but
'Cause
but
that
also
memorialized
what
this
about the
transfer
tax?
of
What about
wealth.
the tax thing he put into play, where people got more money in their check every week?
That was
they-
like for like a couple of weeks.
No, it
or
wasn't for a couple
pay
weeks.
periods.
No, it wasn't
Yeah,
for
it
a
was.
pay period. No, it lasted throughout the entirety. You got paid more, but your income tax check was less. See, people don't understand. This is the whole problem. This is what I'm saying. The problem.
I don't know. We need to get in- I would love to get into that,
Nothing
David,
is free in life.
because-
What he did, I remember my sister, your wife's mother. Wait a second. I'm not getting back this much. And one of my dear friends, she says, I only got back 6,000. I usually get 9,000. I says, how much more was in your check every week? Oh, like $300. I says, what do you think? The money's got to come from somewhere.
Okay, but that's
so it's 6 and 1/2 dozen
moving
of the
this,
other.
moving that.
That's what it is. But we'll get into the whole tax
Here's the
structure.
idea. The
on
bottom
nothing.
line. The bottom line is,
Good.
you and I are 99% of America.
Yeah.
0% of what we actually care about makes it into legislation. That's the point of populism. Populism is saying, look, there's a disconnect between your corporate master and the rest of us.
Okay, and
We need to fight.
all right. What we're gonna do is
But that presupposes one thing.
what?
You have more than two parties. And that's why populism was defeated every time. It's because both sides.
You need more
can
than
shield.
two parties. Actually, you need no parties. That's my opinion. But and now wait one more time in defense before we wrap it up. Like you're saying about the taxes and the tax breaks for the corporations, and they pay 20%. Did you know that in New York City, 51% of the taxes are paid by the corporations? People don't see that. They're not paying their fair share. Now they might be able to pay more, but
That's a
then-
local government city. We're
Well,
talking about the treasury. Like we're talking about
but what I'm
the
saying
total
is,
tax bill
now
every
here's
year.
here's another thing, real quick before we wrap it up. A lot of people say, like, and once again, not talking bad about AOC, nothing. Oh, you tax the rich, tax the rich, tax the rich. Here's the problem with taxing the rich. And I'm just a regular, I'm a retired firefighter. I'm a little bit smart once in a while, but I'm no Einstein yet. But tax the rich, overtax. She wears a $30,000 dress, no, a $10,000 dress to a $30,000 event.
But here,
But here's what happens when you overtax the rich. Let's say you're a Rockefeller, you're a Rothschild, you live in Manhattan, your house in Hamptons, you're doing all this. You got a few corporations. You're employing maybe 50, 100,000 people, right? You have it set up in New York. Why Amazon would have been great if they went to Long Island City. That was a little misunderstanding on AOC's part, but
I
we'll get
disagree.
into that.
We can get into that.
What?
I was in the middle of that as the planner.
Okay,
I did
so-
a lot of the planning for that.
So that
Was one of the biggest white collar
You don't think
hustles
we
I've
should?
ever seen
I
in
think
my
we
life.
should have had it. Didn't you want
But
it?
that wasn't the intention of Amazon. Amazon was on a data collection mission. Okay, they got all of these. Okay, so I did Staten Island's actual.
Okay, so whatever Amazon's
that's a whole other show, guys.
Well, okay, but whatever Amazon's thing was, it would have put jobs in New York. And the people at Amazon.
that
would-
presupposes that they actually wanted to be there. They were on a data finding mission.
We'll get into that.
That's a whole show, and
Here's
I
the
can
problem.
literally
Okay, we're
explain
going to
it
wrap
to
it
you.
up. But one thing before about taxing the rich, and we'll bring it up in the next show. They can afford to get the fuck out.
But they've already done it. They're doing inversions.
But what I'm saying
Apple
is,
doesn't even pay corporate taxes in America.
Okay, so
It's an American company.
We'll get into that. But the
So-
problem is, if you overtax them, they can afford to leave and fucking.
I'm not asking to overtax them.
What's
Let's
that?
actually tax them. Period.
No.
They're
The-
not
the
getting
politicians.
taxed.
But we have to go into that because
me and Rosie pay the bill.
All right,
Trust me.
All right, we'll see about that. You understand my point. You got
I
enough money
understand your
to
point.
leave, and it happened.
But I
20
don't
years
agree
ago.
that the argument is because they've already done it.
What do you mean you've already done it?
You're not going to move your capital somewhere else when you can.
You don't have to move your capital somewhere.
You don't have to pay
You
your
can shut
taxes.
You can just move your company somewhere else. They did
Why
it
do
to
you
the order.
think
Why do you
that's
think
what
Detroit,
Apple did? Apple
why,
does
why
those
do you think
the
Detroit,
inversion. It's
yeah.
in there's
Detroit
corporate
did it.
offices in Ireland. Give me a break.
Detroit did it, and Trump was bringing it back. The auto
Well,
industry.
okay.
Apple fucks us.
You're conflating a couple things. I wanna-
Apple screws us.
I think if
They're
you
in
actually put the numbers on the, if you look at the data,
all right.
and you look at the numbers, it's unbelievable how much corporate tax has been taken out of the equation. And where does that burden go? The burden goes on the rest
All
of
right,
us,
so
and primarily on
we'll do
the
that on
professional working class.
We'll do that
like
on
me
another
and
show.
you.
But what I'm saying is about regular corporations. You know, maybe not that big. If you tax somebody too much money, they have the right. They can just go somewhere else, and then you
Right,
lose it.
but they're
then you lose the
effectively
jobs.
not paying taxes, though. So that's my point.
I'm
Is
gonna say,
they don't have to go anywhere.
No, you're missing my point. If they're not paying taxes now, but if you're saying not paying nothing, they're paying something. But if they're overtaxed and they leave, you fuck the economy. Because then
That's
the
a
guys
silly-
like us that work.
Okay,
We-
we need
how
to
are we
have
gonna work?
guys. We need another show
That's
on
another
this.
show. All right, everybody.
I'm bringing my
Common ground.
spreadsheets.
Yeah, Nick's gonna bring spreadsheets. Common ground with Jimmy P. Common sense makes sense. We're trying to make sense now.
And it's all love,
trying to
guys.
make some common sense. Everybody, we
It's
all
all
love each
love.
other. And we're gonna go into the second part. We still don't know what populism is totally, and we'll wrap
get
it up.
there.
We'll bring it into the second show. All right, everybody. Good night. God bless you. And yeah, I have a lot to say. God bless you. That's okay. Good night.
It's okay.
Take it easy. Bye bye.